So welcome, 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 Marco. We give thanks for your consistent leadership. And as always, it sets to begin all things by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Marco, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work, sir?
Oh, it's a pleasure, and thank you for having me, Victor. And thank you for making that acknowledgement. It's so critically important. I'm Marco de Buono. I have the privilege of being the president of Canadian Tire Jumpstart Charities, which is the single charitable focus of Canadian Tire Corporation and all of its affiliates. Our focus is to help kids achieve the best version of themselves through sport, play, and physical activity. We believe at its core that sport, as Nelson Mandela so articulately expressed throughout his lifetime, has the power to be an equalizer, has the power to change the game on the field and off the field of play. And so we use sport as a tool to help kids do better in school, to help them do better at home, to improve their mental health and well-being, to upskill them so that they can access better employment and better opportunities over the long term. And we do this, as I said, with the backing of Canadian Tire Corporation, our dealers who run our Canadian Tire store network, and the vendors who support the corporation, as well as a growing number of Canadians who shop all of the stores within the retail network. And as a result of that, over our 20-year history, almost 20-year history, we're 19 this year, we've been able to help almost 3.5 million kids by investing close to $275 million in communities from coast to coast to coast, with a very important focus on underserved children and youth across Canada.
That's absolutely remarkable work. When I think about the amount of equity seeking, deserving, and sometimes equity denied young people across Canada, coast to coast, that require supports, and an environment that really centers justice, access, inclusion, diversity, and equity, I couldn't applaud your work more. So once again, thank you for your visionary leadership and all that you're doing to make a difference in our communities. So with that, I'm going to add, my next question is, what inspires you most about your work right now? What has you curious?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, what inspires me right now is that coming out of the pandemic, it's clear that there's a very unfortunate narrative around the well-being of children and youth. Whether it was the pandemic that brought us to the realization that children are not doing well, and obviously there's a disproportionate impact on underserved and equity-seeking youth across the country, or whether we are just now paying attention because everything else was stripped away from them, that we can't deny the fact that kids are just not doing well. And if we don't act, because this is a systemic issue, this isn't just a failure of accessing sport and recreation, or a failure of accommodating kids in school, or a failure of accommodating them in the healthcare system. If we don't act, and by act, I mean start by listening to what their needs are, we are going to lose an entire generation of children and youth. We know they're very resilient, and it's the kids that inspire me every day. When we talk to participants in some of our programs, they continuously surprise us with their resiliency, their innovation, their commitment, their passion, their enthusiasm. If we could harness that collectively amongst all the kids who are just not being served adequately across the country, we would be able to tackle virtually every social problem that this country is facing right now. So that's what motivates me to get up every day. The challenges are real, though. I mean, we can't deny we're heading into a macroeconomic climate that's going to make it more difficult for us to address those needs, but that shouldn't stop us from playing the long game here. We can start to build trust with these youth today by making the investments we can afford now, and slowly but surely getting to where we need to be by enabling them to be the best version of themselves.
I couldn't agree more. I grew up in East Toronto, Scarborough, and we didn't have youth outreach workers at the time. Our engagement model was a green box that the Scarborough Parks and Rec staff would open up with frisbees and balls, and they'd come back at the end of the day, and that was the level of engagement. So the importance of this level of youth engagements is so critical and so vital. in terms of positive youth development. So once again, I applaud your work. And it's a perfect segue. Could you elaborate more on what challenges and barriers you and your colleagues face and some of the approaches you're taking to overcome them?
Yeah, at this time of year, as we head into the tail end of the year and everyone's celebrating the various meaningful cultural moments that are important to them, I like to take the time with the team to reach out to some of the organizations that have received our funding over the course of the year and just listen to what they have to say. What is it like for them on the ground right now? What are they seeing with kids and youth? And right now what we're hearing are three real important concerns, at least from the community sport, physical activity, and recreation landscape. One, we're hearing that everyone is very concerned about the macroeconomic climate. Most organizations did not recover from the pandemic, and so they already had setbacks that were exacerbated by inflationary pressures. They couldn't afford the cost of facility rentals, insurance, equipment, and so on and so forth, because all of those costs escalated and their revenues had declined significantly, if not evaporated completely. So that's one element that people are concerned about. What is this going to do? Is this going to be the nail in the coffin, so to speak, that leads to the demise of many organizations as we head into a difficult year? The other issue that we're hearing, which is very real, and we're seeing it reflected even in studies published by other organizations like Community Foundations of Canada and so on, we're seeing a real decline in volunteerism across the country. We never recovered to pre-pandemic levels of volunteerism. For a sector that relies heavily on qualified volunteers to engage with youth, that creates an additional financial pressure where now these organizations, in order to offer the same level of service and safety and quality to their participants, either have to go off and pay for staff, which on one hand may not be a bad thing because they could always hire youth from their programming and provide workforce opportunities for them, but it does lead to additional financial pressures, right? So that human resource issue that we're seeing at the community level, and that's not true to sport alone, it's true across the social services sector, but you can't offer programs if you don't have qualified staff in sport, physical activity, and recreation. So that's leading to an additional pressure. And the third piece really reflects to the challenges that organizations are seeing with respect to engaging youth. In their own words, organizations tell us that kids are less engaged. They're less enthusiastic about participating in some sport and physical activity programming, particularly individual sport. They are coming with more depression. They are angry. They are upset. And so on one hand, it's forcing us to think of a new model of engagement, right? So really listening to youth and what they need, being there, focusing less in the sport context on the technical and tactical skill development on the field of play, and more on the social and emotional learning skills that we can work with youth to empower them to take charge of their own well-being. So it requires a coach moving from being a tactician to being almost a therapist or a trusted partner in the journey that these kids are going on. So those are the things that we're hearing, and they're not all new, but they are certainly heightened as we speak in November of 2023.
I agree completely. At SETC, data is a love language for us. And when you look at some of the research that the Foundations for Black Communities, our good colleague Liban Abakar and MLSC, Bridget Estrella has done, or even the work that Bruce McDonald and Kathy at Imagine Canada on the state of the sector, or Kathy Taylor at the Ontario Nonprofit Network, it all leads to what you're saying, especially post-pandemic, when you look at the remarkable work actually CFC has done with Red Cross United Way around the Community Service Recovery Fund. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to almost future-proof the sector and ensure that some of the most vulnerable, distinct populations and young people aren't at risk. So once again, I think we're hearing the same things, and a lot of work needs to be done definitely to future-proof this very vital work. So once again, thank you for your candor, transparency, and your leadership. My next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work that you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially as we head into, again, not to belabor the point, but as we head into a difficult economic environment over the next, 12, potentially longer months, our focus is unequivocally going to be on providing the financial supports and other supports that will allow the amazing community organizations in virtually every community across the country to continue to serve youth in their communities, particularly underserved youth. So we want to be able to mobilize absolutely every dollar we can to the greatest extent of our ability as quickly as we can to the organizations that need it now. We're not going to be sitting here stockpiling resources to future-proof ourselves for another day. We know that our model allows us to get that money out the door quickly, and that's what we will do. But it's more than money. And this is where having conversations with organizations and listening to youth is also giving us some sense of what other supports we can mobilize when dollars might be a little tight over the next little bit. And so that is our priority, just mobilizing supports as quickly as we can. But underpinning that, as we've discussed, there's a real emerging mental health crisis amongst children and youth. So we've spent the last year trying to identify new services and supports that we can mobilize at scale to help children take control of their mental health and well-being. And we're excited that we've launched one resource for preteens this past fall, and we have a brand new resource leveraging all the tricks and tools of social media to help older teens actually take control of their mental health in a way that they're accustomed to through digital and online presence. So we're excited to launch that tool in 2024. It's going to be complementary to all of the other services and supports that we provide. But we can't ignore the need to support kids in their mental health journey right now in whatever way we can, using the power of sport as a tool. So it's mobilizing resources while trying to help kids take control of their mental health and well-being. That's where we're going to focus next year.
That's a remarkable focus. My last meeting for the day was with my brilliant colleague, Devon Jones, the founder of YACE, the Youth Association of Athletics and Character Education. And him and Ardav and their team, they really press this point around mental well-being and really supporting young people's positive development. So I couldn't agree more with all the sentiments that you just shared. And once again, we give thanks for your leadership, sir. My last question is, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to actions for our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few things. I mean, we could probably, without giving a laundry list of things to do. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that about the work that you do at SETC and the social finance piece of this equation. It's important that we start to be more pragmatic about articulating the outcomes we're achieving through the work that we're doing, not just Jumpstart, but our colleagues in this space and in the social impact space. To that end, we've been developing a social impact calculator that gives an immediate sense of the return on the investment of the work that we're doing, like now, not 10 years from now, not 20 years, not a generation from now, but now. The immediate return on investment we're seeing using sport as a tool to help with academic achievement, with reduced youth offending, with improved mental health and physical health and well-being, and with upskilling and potential employability. Just to give you a sense, this is a version 1 of the tool, but we estimate that the $30 million we invested over this past year has yielded over $221 million in immediate social value to communities across the country. These are the types of tools that we need to start mobilizing collectively as a sector if we want to really capitalize on the opportunities that social finance allows us to access. So, rather than creating these overly complex and overly engineered, tools around evaluation and reporting, I think using simple tools like the ones that we have that can be mobilized at a grassroots level, easily understandable, easily operationalized, is going to be key to unlocking the financial opportunity that lies ahead with social finance. The other thing I would say is, I know we just talked about the dire state of the nation, so to speak, when it comes to sport, recreation, youth, and well-being. But we have an opportunity, and I always like to cite, a poem that, again, Mr. Mandela cited when he was first, inaugurated as president. Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. So we have a choice. We can either cower in the corner and panic about what's about to hit, or we can use the light that sits in all of us to address all of these issues head on and do what we can to help children and youth in particular, from our context anyways, to really emerge from this as strong, powerful, and resilient as we can. So we choose, and we're calling on everyone to choose to use their light to make a difference, as small as it may be, over the next while things are a little bit rough.
I couldn't agree more. Ashe, ashe, amin, amen. Thank you so much, Marco, for your leadership, for your tenacity, for your resilience, and for being so candid and transparent in this discussion. And we'll close this interview the way we began, by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts, whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Marco, for all that you do for so many.
Thank you.